Hey guys, I may look kind of bad. I've been up since 2:57 this morning. Hi Shasta, I'll let you guys log on for a second. I am gonna have a Red Bull. Oh yes, I am. Okay, good morning. Alright, so we talked yesterday about covert warfare. And I'm going to keep bringing this up because I think it's important. I know I'm going to get trolls on here that are going to think, oh, you're so paranoid. There's something wrong with your brain. But that's not true. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and read some stuff to you guys. It's stuff you guys can find online anywhere. But I'll put it up in a file somewhere for you guys too, maybe on the website, okay? Okay, so we talked about covert warfare yesterday. If you didn't see that video, just go ahead and go back on my Twitter feed or on Periscope here, and go ahead and watch those two videos. One's 5 minutes, one's like 15, so I got cut off. Okay, so we know what covert warfare is if you have watched those videos. What we're going to talk about today is attrition warfare and psychological warfare, and also guerrilla warfare too, because there are some tactics in each that are being employed. Okay, so that's why I'm going to go over them. Typically, something like guerrilla warfare, that's not something we normally think of in regards to the opioid crisis, right? So, and let's just make that clear for anyone that's new on here. We're talking about the overdose crisis. The fact that there is illicit fentanyl analogs being trafficked into the country. They're not being stopped, and yet instead of the government going after them, the traffickers of this fentanyl, they're going after doctors and patients. I'm one of them. There's a lot of other people on here that are also part of this. They got cut off their meds, life-saving meds. You might not understand that. If you don't have chronic pain and you don't have intractable pain, just really quick go over this. Intractable pain disease can kill you. If it is not properly treated, it can be fatal. Okay? You go into hypertensive crisis. I'm dealing with that right now. I woke up at 257, 258 this morning with my blood pressure 156 over 106 and my heart rate up. Just laying in bed. Okay? Alright, so there's the basics. Let's talk about attrition warfare. Attrition warfare is a military strategy consisting of belligerent attempts to win a war by bearing down or wearing down the enemy to the point of collapse through continuous losses in personnel and material. The war will usually be won by the side with the greater resources. The word attrition comes from the Latin root atterere, to rub against, similar to the grinding down of the opponent's forces in attrition. Okay? Strategic considerations. Military theorists and strategists have viewed attrition warfare as something to be avoided, in the sense that attrition warfare represents an attempt to grind down an opponent through superior numbers. It represents the opposite of the usual principles of war, in which one attempts to achieve decisive victories by using minimal necessary resources and in minimal amount of time through maneuver, concentration of force, surprise, and the like. On the other hand, a side that perceives itself to be at a marked disadvantage in maneuver warfare or unit tactics may deliberately seek out attrition warfare to neutralize its opponent's advantages. If the sides are nearly evenly matched, the outcome of the war of attrition is likely to be a victory. Okay? That's attrition warfare. We're dealing with parts of these. Okay? Let's look at psychological warfare. I'm going to move you guys just for a second. And I'm going to take some Red Bull because I'm tired. Okay. Psychological warfare is a broad term. But in all documented cases, the concept uses actions intended to reduce an opponent's morale or mental well-being. The aim is to use manipulative tactics to intimidate or persuade a person or people. This process is usually employed through propaganda. Propaganda is ideas or statements that are false or exaggerated and is deliberately spread to influence the masses. The goal of psychological warfare is to intentionally use propaganda to manipulate another and break down their will without using physical force. To get a clearer picture, let's look at the techniques. All right, techniques. Psychological warfare uses fear to break down the psychological well-being of an opponent, as we said. News outlets are one of the first. The news is a large information source that all can tap into. Whether it's government-run or independently owned, the news has the ability to spread whichever information it chooses. By infiltrating a news source, a population could be tainted by volatile information. Number 2, threats. Threats of violence, restrictions of freedom, and control can be made to instill fear in the people. These could be empty threats or threats with true intention. Whatever the case, threatening a group or groups of people can psychologically damage the recipients over time, putting them in a state of constant fear, anxiety, and terror. You guys have PTSD when you go to the doctor? I sure do. This sounds a little familiar, doesn't it, guys? All right, number 3, leaflets. Leaflets are pieces of paper with manipulative messages, pictures that are dropped from the air over areas of war or political unrest. The goal is to persuade the recipients to either support or oppose the political event taking place. Number 4, objects. Using objects such as t-shirts, posters, hats, pins, and more is an effective way to get a message across. The objects can become symbols for larger messages regarding politics, radical beliefs, religious philosophies, etc. These objects can become tools for promotion and even worship. Okay, 5, false flag. A false flag is when a group releases false information or carries out a fake terror attack to instill fear in people. However, the blame is put on another group or organization to gain control over the masses and shift opinion. Let's go over that one more time. Who's flooding the streets with illicit fentanyl? Do you really think it's the drug dealers and the cartels? An expensive, pure drug like fentanyl and heroin and cocaine and everything else you can think of? I don't think so. Not when there's 60,000 people overdosing on it. I'm sorry. This is a false flag. They're using this for a purpose. Okay? So let's read this again. A false flag. A false flag is when a group releases false information or carries out a fake terror attack to instill fear in people. However, the blame is put on another group. Who's the other group? Who's the group that they're blaming? There's 2 of them. There's actually 3. They're blaming addicts. They're blaming doctors. They're blaming patients. Okay? We are the scapegoats. Do you see? Do you see why I get upset? Okay, so they do this to gain control over the masses and shift public opinion. They have shifted the discourse so far outside of what is sane that I can't even keep track of it anymore. Okay, let's go to, I believe we're on number 6, media, which could have been on number 1, but let's look at media. While it may not seem like it, this kind of media, okay, films, Music and books can act as tools for psychological warfare. The messages in the media can rewrite history from a perspective and or put new ideas in the minds of the populace. This is something I wanted to tell you guys yesterday. The victor writes history. This is why we have to win. Because if we don't, this is what's going to go down in history. All of our work, it won't be recognized. Guys, this is why I say we need to take action. And I'm not saying we need to do anything but go after this from a legal route. However you know what? Maybe we need to use the same tactics, just, no violence or anything. Use the same tactics. Start making pamphlets, passing them out all over the place. I'll put them up on Dark Side of the Spoonie. You guys can download them and just, print them out and put them all over your city. In fact, I think I'm going to do that. Okay. Let's look at examples of psychological warfare. Even though we already kind of understand this. There are many examples of psych warfare throughout history. Let's take a look at a few and see how propaganda and psychological attacks have affected their victims. So, I gotta create an account. Anyway, World War II, the Nazis, you guys get it, right? They were masters at propaganda. But anything that we put out, that's not propaganda if we're telling the truth, okay? The problem that we're having is that the legacy media is being told what to say, and they're not protesting it. Not very many of them anyway. Maybe George Knapp, maybe a couple local stations. We have to be just as savvy, guys, and I'm not sure how we do that yet, but this is why I want to talk about this stuff and see if we can hack something out. Okay, guerrilla warfare is a form of irregular warfare in which a small group of combatants, such as paramilitary personnel, armed civilians, or irregulars, use military tactics including ambushes, sabotage, raids, petty warfare, hit-and-run tactics, and mobility to fight a larger and less mobile traditional military. But that's not what we're facing. That's not what they're facing. We're not a large traditional military. We are the people. We're the people that are trying to fight against this in every legal way that we can. But do you see the tactics that are being used? If you still think I'm crazy, I can't help you. But I'm telling you, these tactics are being used every single day. We have to find a way to build a pipeline back into the public consciousness. Because if we don't, they're going to write history. See you guys later.